Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I'm joined by my dear friend Kevin Gamble. He and I are going to discuss a topic today, and the topic that I chose for this episode is kind of similar to one we did a while back about pedals, where if you could only own one brand of pedals, what pedal maker would you choose that would satisfy most of your needs going forward? And this time around, we had to each choose an instrument manufacturer that would fulfill all of our needs from now until the end of time. And the other thing to put in there is that this includes product lines dating back to the origin of the company. So let's say if I picked Gibson, I would have the full history of Gibson to be able to choose my instruments from and have to be satisfied with going forward. You know, if it was Fender or whatever brand, we also get to have access to their legacy products. So I just thought it'd be a fun thought experiment to kind of think about the breadth and depth and quality of various companies that are in existence today, their instruments, their offerings, and how they would work for us individually. It's also a fun opportunity for you, the viewer, to throw your choice down in the comments, and feel free to do that, and please do, and we can get some conversation going on that. And I think that I'm going to put Kevin on the spot, just right up here, right up front. And just I'll go second, and let you tell everyone what you would pick as your primary or as your only choice of instrument maker to use for the rest of your life.
Well, I admit I was kind of hoping you would go first because I usually appreciate your clarity of thought on these kind of things, and I thought it would help me reflect a little bit while I'm still finalizing my answer. But
well, if you want me to go first, I will.
No, I'm happy to go, but with me, it was a case of similar to our pedal discussion, where I almost said, I think we thought you have to set aside Boss because they have one of everything or 10 of everything, and it's almost too obvious an answer. For me, it was kind of tough, but I thought, okay, I've got to set aside Fender because not that I think you need to or anyone else needs to, but do you need more than a Strat and a Tele and a P bass and a J bass or something like that? And my own history says that I probably don't. And so it felt like that would be like the end of the discussion for me if I picked them. So what are you thinking about that?
Fender's off the table to begin with because they can't make an acoustic guitar.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that,
Yeah, and that kind of relates to what I was thinking too, because there are, I'm kind of coming from a bass first perspective, but there are manufacturers I had to leave off the table because they don't make guitars and other instruments like a Wall or a Warwick or something like that. And so, yeah, that was interesting, but I didn't really think too much about acoustic instruments, focused mostly on electric instruments. That was enough to even kind of make it a challenge, but I tell you, for me, what I ended up settling on was actually kind of three answers, and I'll try to be quick about it.
Okay.
I thought about if money is no object, if money is some object, and then sort of the real, most likely real world option that would be taken if I was confronted with that situation. So yeah, acoustic guitar is something that has been a big part of my history, but not as big a part of my present. So I mostly focused on the electric instruments.
Okay.
But
Fair enough.
So first, okay, real quick. So first off, if money was no object, my thinking there was that as I get older, as much as I appreciate the character of different instruments, the idiosyncrasies of mass-produced instruments have kind of become a little less charming over time, and a bit more of a hassle to deal with. And so it's like, well, it would be an opportunity to maybe get out of that into something that just performs more consistently, performs at a higher level, exhibits more craftsmanship. So my choice there was Alembic because it's kind of an emotional choice because I still regret getting rid of that Alembic
Wow.
bass I had briefly 30 years ago. It wasn't one of the highest end Alembics or anything, but it's like that's the unobtainium category now. And so I thought, well, high level of craftsmanship, high level of, consistency and performance. It would just be just a kind of a nice experience to have that I don't currently have. And so you lose something maybe in terms of character and versatility and so forth with, swapping parts and customizing and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a compromise no matter what, but I thought that would be the kind of luxury choice to be able to experience.
Do they make?
So
Sorry to interrupt, but and they make guitars as well, right?
They do. You don't hear about them as much for probably obvious reasons, but they do. They've always made a full line of electric guitars that look fairly similar to the basses in a
I would
lot of
imagine.
cases.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who would be a good example. I think who was Bowie's longtime guitarist in the 70s and 80s? Was it Alomar?
Yeah, Carlos Alomar.
I believe he used a lot of alembic electrics. So if I'm remembering correctly, that would be someone to check out who did that. But shifting over to the if money is some object category, then it would be a grapple between performance versus character, where you wouldn't be able to get the really immaculate technical level, but there would be some compromise, but it would still be an opportunity to kind of, I don't know, straighten some of that out. And so I grappled on this one. My first thought here was Steinberger, actually, because it's like these things are engineered to just work, to just,
Yeah.
from the bridges to the necks to the strings. It's like it's all just built to just work. And I've kind of find over time that I get more and more focused on the music itself and less on the tool to get there. Even though I love the character and the personality of the tools, I find myself kind of thinking more past that into just making the sounds and then doing something with them after the fact. And so I think that would be just a nice, simple, clean way to do it. And the other thing there, if I wanted more character, this felt like an obvious choice for me, but it still seemed to make sense, was Yamaha, just because they cover the whole gamut of potential instruments. And I'd probably go back to the late 70s and through the mid 80s for their work there, because you've got all the great solid body guitars they're renowned for. Those earliest BB basses, I'd probably go to the top of the line with those. And, they make acoustics, they make every instrument you can think of. And so it would be hard to pass on that, even though they might not have the same character and just get the job done of a Fender. But the last category would be sort of like reality. What's the current reality? If someone said you've got to get rid of all these guitars you've bought, and then you're going to have to buy, a new set of instruments to replace them, what would you choose from? I thought about this one and I thought, well, it'd be hard for me to justify buying a whole new lineup of the instruments that I have, and I couldn't really probably afford to at this point. And so, what I settled on there was I would I would take this electric guitar, this handmade electric guitar that came from you, and I would buy a bunch of parts, probably a Warmoth body and neck, and pick the hardware and pickups I would like, and I would just build my own bass, and I would stick with that. I wouldn't go through the
Wow.
hassle of recreating an entire lineup. Now, building an acoustic, maybe I would balk at that, but I would just probably go that route rather than having to buy back into everything again. So that may count as a non-answer, but I thought the thought process was the most interesting part of this exercise rather than coming up with a clean answer. And so, kind of like with the pedal discussion, I'm looking forward to the cleaner, more
Yeah.
straightforward answer that you were likely to give, and to hear your thinking behind that.
Yeah, I have. I have a very, very clear and unequivocated answer. It's interesting. So realistically, you would probably either be on the Yamaha train or parts casters. It sounds like, or
Those are the most
or making
those are the
your
most
own.
realistic options. Yeah.
Yeah. I get what you're saying about buying some surgical instruments. There are people, I think of what the 5-watt world guy. He's like, tries to use minimal amounts of gear, even though that hasn't worked out for him, because he seems to always have tons of new stuff. But for a while, he had been preaching, like he would play the Strandberg stuff, like to have a Telly-ish version of Strandberg. So these very highly refined and highly a perfect instrument, if you will, and I think of the Parker Fly too, as being another, like if you owned that guitar, you could probably get away with nothing else because it would always be tuning stable and not break and stuff like that. So I really appreciate your practicality. I think that's interesting though. But out of all of that, the one that I'm hearing though that would be the most realistic would be Yamaha. And which is smart because there's no question in my mind. It would be Yamaha, Yamaha, Yamaha all day long. I could have a drum kit. I could have a piano. I could have any they have tons of amplifiers in their history. Now, I did restrict this to just being instruments. So let's get back to, I was thinking for our discussion, this is just going to be acoustic guitars, electric guitars, and basses. And let's keep it there, and let's keep it there for the comments as well. But my point in bringing up Yamaha and talking about those things is because you could outfit an entire studio with everything and not have to go beyond Yamaha.
And everything would work well.
Yes.
And reliably and stably and get the job done.
And I think it goes beyond that. So what I wanted to do first is be like, okay, well, with Fender, I would, Fender would be my choice if they could make an acoustic guitar. If they had a nylon string guitar that sounded any good. Nylon's a big deal to me. Steel string, small-bodied acoustics are a big deal to me. Because when I'm in the studio, when the rubber meets the road, I'm playing acoustic about 50% of the time. So that is an important thing for me. So that rules out Fender. And then you go over to Gibson, and it's like, well, Gibson, I could live with Les Pauls, maybe, and, exclusively, although the scale length would bother me at a certain point, because I prefer Fender scale length. But they don't make a bass that sounds worth a damn. There's not a single bass in the entire Gibson lineup that I would take over a P bass or a P bass clone any day.
That was kind of the deal breaker for me with Gibson. It's not that they don't have basses that work, and I'd love I'd be happy with like Les Pauls and Explorers and the double cuts and everything they've put together over the years with guitar. But I couldn't, as important as bass is for me, I couldn't make that choice. So
my primary acoustic guitar is a Gibson, a vintage Gibson. So I love vintage Gibson acoustics, the cheap ones. They're great. They're fantastic instruments. They have a unique character that works for me. So immediately the big two are out, and then you've got makers like Martin and Taylor. Well, they don't make electric instruments, and what they have made aren't any good either. And then one that was like floating in my periphery for a little bit was Godin. I'm like, now they make some nice nylon. They make great acoustics. They have cool electric guitars, and now that they have that Alex Lifeson, sports, Hector Sportscaster, I'm like, well, there's my Strat right there.
That would be nice. Yeah.
So that was there. The reason that I ended up at Yamaha is because, well, there's the affordability factor. Then I just started thinking about one-for-one replacements of everything that I have. I already have a Yamaha bass that I bought from you, the BB800. I could buy old BBs like you were talking about. I would have everything from the low end to the BB300 like you have, all the way up, or maybe not even have to go that far with it. I'd be happy with the one that I have. And then I thought about nylon, and I'm like, they make a flamenco. They make a great classical guitar. I'm like, if I picked up a couple, mid-range Yamaha a steel string and a nylon, I'd be set. The Pacifica series,
Hmm.
I mean, infinitely moddable. And
Yeah.
also, they come in so many different configurations and they've been made forever. So you've got your pick of the litter of old ones, new ones, all
Yeah.
kinds of different finishes. Like the one that I have has a DiMarzio super distortion in it. You can do anything you want with those. So I'm like, okay, well, that covers Strat. And then you might say, well, sure, they have the S series guitars from the 70s. The Carlos Santana is, made famous. And those are really expensive now. But did you know that they made a one-for-one Les Paul clone as well, called the Studio
Yes.
Lord?
Yep.
Yep, the
Studio
Studio Lord
Lord.
and the
Yeah.
Lord Player. And
Hmm.
those two are out there. And a
And they're really
glued-in.
nice looking too. They
Oh
used a lot
yeah,
of finishes that Gibson wasn't using, and they look great.
yeah, and you can get one of those in pretty pristine condition in the $500 to $700 range, and they're vintage. So I'd have my Les Paul, and then they've made Telly-ish type things, but really, if I have a Strat, then I've got my Telly bass covered. And so I just thought about it that way, and I was like, well, I've got the bass and I've got the acoustics covered, and then a decent selection of electrics, which they do have, and they really they punch so far above their weight class as far as what you get for the price. I mean,
Yes.
Yamaha has never let me down. I made a video about it where I was just like, I'm going to show you the pieces of Yamaha, some of the pieces of Yamaha gear that I own and I've owned for like 20 plus years that are still in rotation, and never go away and just keeps working, from rack mount gear to, my one of my reverb units in here is, the Rev 100 by Yamaha. It's a
Yep.
phenomenal unit. All of my Yamaha guitars and the bass have been great for me. So that's where I would end up. I would just go with Yamaha, and then if you wanted to expand the thought experiment, I'd be happy with a Yamaha drum kit. I'd be happy, keyboards, obviously, synths, outboard
Hmm.
gear. I don't know if they make an audio interface, but you could, if they do, that would probably be fine to plug into your computer, and you could probably go just 100. And they have mics too, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
So you could do your entire thing on just Yamaha gear. And,
Yeah, and
and,
that's the
and be
thing. It's
fine.
like if you don't know they make it, it would work if they did. It's like, do they
Yeah.
make that? Well, if they did, it would work for me. I know it would because I trust that company implicitly. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what better testimony is there than that?
Yeah, and they're probably a lot of people, are like, well, yeah, Yamaha stuff's great, and they try to put it in the beginner category, but you know what? Working people, working musicians, you're shocked sometimes. I'll be like, oh, well, you're using Yamaha. All right, that's awesome. And because it just works. Like at the conservatory where my son takes lessons and performs, there's all kinds of Yamaha stuff floating around, because
Yep.
it's those kind of places where it's not going to be on the stage, at the Super Bowl halftime, but in conservatories and music academies and other places that need lots of gear, that's reliable and that kids learn on and that teachers use to teach. It's all over the place, and it sounds good. I got rid of my Martin Dreadnought and kept my Yamaha Dreadnought. I'm not saying that it's a like that the Yamaha is a better build quality or something like that, but I like the sound of it better, and it was more playable. So I don't know how else to judge something than with my ears and my hands, and the Yamaha won over the Martin. So
Yeah, yeah, the proof is in the pudding, and people don't think about it as as their first thought when you think about what the pros use, but from a bass point of view, you've got Billy Sheehan, John Patitucci, Nathan East, some of the best of the
Michael
best.
Anthony.
Michael Anthony, I mean, you can cut across all genres. Some of the top people in all the different areas of music are and have always used them, and so they really check off every single box. There's nothing that they can't do, and I'm glad you mentioned Godin. That was definitely I think a good honorable mention. We
Yeah.
both know firsthand the quality of what they do. I have a Godin bass. We both have Seagull guitars. That's a real sort of underrated, underappreciated company, but Yamaha just kind of takes that several levels further historically and to the present day. And if you can't do it with a Yamaha, you can't do it. So great choice. And this almost reminds me of the pedal discussion where MXR was where we both ended up. It's like, yeah, realistically, we both have MXR. We both love MXR.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that be the choice? And it's like, well, the proof is in the pudding. We both have a bunch of Yamaha stuff and always have, and it just does the job.
It does, and like I said, it's far more, and it's better than people give it credit for. I think there's a couple younger guitarists out there that are showcasing the Rev Star these days too,
yes.
which is another newer Yamaha model. That's definitely worth checking out. All right, well, I'd like to thank you so much if you watched the video to this point. Please hit like and subscribe on your way out. Also, in the comments, what would you choose? There's a lot of people out there that might only play electric guitar, might only play bass, might only play acoustic, and would have a completely different perspective if they had to choose one brand. And maybe there's some people out there that are so brand loyal, they only have one brand in their collection now. I would love to hear about it. Kevin would love to hear about it. We'll jump in the comments with you. So, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.